Hi, I'm Phil and this is a video. Every semester I have some students who ask me, "Hey, professor, can I watch any of the short films or projects you've worked on?" And I have to say, not really. The reason is simple. I have not put out a number of the projects that I've worked on over the years because I don't think that they're up to snuff. But I did make them. And now, faced with the difficulty of feeding the almighty algorithm, I am going to post some cringe. We're going to start with something called Reservations Required. This was my attempt to do a vibey, Wong Kar-wai inspired kind of a short film. This was supposed to kind of capture the energy of a Chungking Express or an In the Mood for Love with absolutely no budget whatsoever and done in one day. So I don't know what we were thinking. Plus, we had this project set up to shoot on the day after my friend's naturalization ceremony, which is just like terrible timing. But you know, we did get the project done. I want to call out the people who helped me on this project because they were absolutely the best. First of all, we had our MVP, Cheyenne, who was both the leading lady for one scene and she was a grip for the entire project, which is just more work than any person ever should be asked to do, but she absolutely killed it. We also had my friend Chris Buck playing the lead, and he had to interpret a script that was basically a poem, if I remember right, to get his performance. He stuck around and really nailed it for the whole day. Of course, for a cinematographer, I had the Ilya Kuryakin to my Napoleon Solo, Konstantin Belishev, and then we were filming in the house of Dr. Kim Herzinger, a good friend who has sadly passed away, who let us have access to his rare book collection, the coolest house I've ever seen, and took us all out to a French dinner in the middle of the shoot just to get to know us. It was a wild time, it was an interesting project, and it didn't go great. I'm going to let Konstantin take over from here, because I'd love to hear his point of view, but I'll come back one more time before we watch the short. Hey Konstantin, what do you remember about this project?
Well, the day before, like you mentioned, my parents came from Fort Lauderdale to celebrate my naturalization. This was all happening at my then girlfriend's place in San Antonio. That same day, we went to Austin to see a Muslim rapper perform at Empire Control Room. First time I've been there. I ended up shooting there a lot. So I remember waiting in line, and my old philosophy professor came by, Peter Wake, and that was weird. It was very sort of synchronicity type of event. I don't remember partying extensively the night before. I do remember waking up very tired and very late and leaving from San Marcos very late. When I got to Kim Herzinger's house, I realized two things. The house was amazing. I mean, truly, it had a unique setup of rooms. It wasn't overly large, but it felt it was. And it was stacked full of just the most awesome media. And the second thing I realized was that this was going to be a hard time. I realized that I was going to have a hard time figuring out how to operate the camera. I still didn't really have my foundations locked in for videography. And then, of course, we had nothing resembling a plan, which wasn't unusual, but because we didn't know how to use our tools, that made it all the more scary. Since we only had 1 week light and just not enough space or money for lights, we went with ambitious camera movements and figured I would just figure out how to minimize the shake while also making the autofocus work, which worked, but not as well as we wanted to, if I remember correctly. It didn't help that we were shooting with the lens, which was very wide, I believe a 12 millimeter, wide open, which made it very difficult for it to search for stuff. It didn't go particularly well, at least at first. Must have done about 10 takes of Buck getting off the couch in the living room and then moving through into the dining room and then hooking a left through the kitchen and onto the office. At some point, I had to walk past Cheyenne and she had to stand up with the lights to illuminate the back of Chris Buck's head. So it didn't even matter. I'm not sure why we spent a lot of time on that, but we felt it was important, probably because we were in love with the sort of stuff Tarkovsky was doing in his slow cinema and wanted that to be a part of it too. Because we only had one lens, we weren't really sure what to do with it. So we wanted to shoot in Kim's study, which is filled with books, the most awesome books I've ever seen, just the best collection ever. But because I was shooting on a 12 millimeter lens, I wasn't quite sure how to capture it. aside of just showing there's a lot of stuff here. And I'm not sure if we ever really did. And so by the time we got to the main course, which we also didn't plan well, as far as continuity goes, because Philip was going to do the cooking and Mr. Buck was gonna do the acting with a very wide lens on. So I had to get really close to that food and still keep it in focus. But I felt pretty confident. But I do remember that the plating sequence was torture. We didn't have enough light and we didn't have good quality light. So we had a really hard time making the steak look good. It looked like something, but it was all very green yellow. Whatever the case may be, Philip and I are very lucky to have friends who are as supportive as they are, as excited as we were, and who had even less of an idea of what we were doing. And yeah, that is it.
Hey, thanks, Constantine. Great work. Well, that's Reservations Required. There's going to be more stories to come, and some of them are going to include re-edits of this material that make it into an entirely different project. But for now, stick around, and I hope you enjoy Reservations Required.